All right, we're back. I see the seconds ticking away here. So now, these are the lights I bought. These are Ford cowling lights. They're from a 1933-34 Ford. And I found these to be the best product to use on that because the design of the lights are bullet type, the same as my headlights and my cowling lights and my tail lights on the car itself. So these will match up pretty good. The only difference is that this has got a convex lens instead of a flat lens. But we're just going to ignore that, and I don't think anybody's going to say anything. What's nice about this is that these are made out of stainless steel, so they should be pretty durable. I don't believe that the stems are made out of stainless, but we'll work with them. You know, like I say, I don't drive my cars out in the weather and stuff like that, so you know, as durable as these are, these should last forever. Now, what I did in order to change it from a white lens, or a clear lens, I should say, to a red lens, is that I went out and bought some reflectors. And then I ground them down to the right size circle so that they would fit inside the reflector. And I put those in there. Then I could put the glass in, the reflector, and then I'll put the trim ring on and put the screw in through the back to hold it all together. Now the tricky thing about this is that with this stem on here, it doesn't exactly lay straight. So I'm going to have to make a bracket that bends out at an angle like that. And I'll show you it here. I bought some aluminum. It's 1.25 inches by 1/8 inch thick. And what's going to happen is I'm going to drill a hole in here, and then I'll bolt this through, and that'll make them point straight out the back. So that's the plan. And then I've got to make another bracket that goes over the top with 2 bolts to clamp it to the bumper bracket. And like I said, I've done this on my other car, so I know what I'm doing by now, and hopefully I can have these wired up in no time. Now these lights are from Vintage Industries. Or Vintage Incorporated. What's nice about them is that they have a ground. They have yellow, black is for the ground, yellow is for the parking light, and the red is for the turn signals. So like I said, I don't believe right now I'm going to be putting turn signals on this car. So we'll get these up and running, and I'll show you how I make the rest of these brackets. This is pretty straightforward. All I did was measure it out, make my mark across here, put it in a vise, and then took a hammer. You can see a little bit of abrasion there from the hammer, and bent them over. Now as far as the angle goes, I kind of approximated that. I mean, being that it's made out of aluminum, I can adjust it a little bit one way or the other. That's it for now. Hi there. I'm back again, And I've been working on the brackets for the auxiliary brake lights, and I've got 2 of them done. And this is made out of aluminum. It's 1¼ inch wide by 1/8 inch thick. And what's going to happen is that this will go on one side of the bumper bracket, and this will clamp it to the other side of the bumper bracket, as you can see. Now, this one here is pretty straightforward because all I had to do was put a bend here, and I could easily do that in the vise, and then drill a hole that will accept the light, and then 2 5/16 holes here for the bolts. This one here is a little trickier because, as you can see, it has a profile to it with this hump in the middle and then flat here. And that's so that it will fit tightly up against the existing bumper bracket. Now, in order to make this shape, I have an extra bumper that I have here that has that profile right here in it. So I'm going to show you how I bent this piece of metal using C-clamps, and also I used a socket so I could get this curve right here in there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I've got my piece of aluminum stock right here, and I'm going to clamp it in and line it up, and we'll get going on this. Now, it'd probably be easier if I took this apart and didn't have the double bar bumper, just used one of the bars, but I'm really not too interested in taking this all apart because of the fact that it's rusty, and I'm going to have to do some serious disassembling to do that. So I clamp, first thing I do is clamp one side to the bumper, and then I'm going to take a square and pretty much square it up the best I can, which that looks pretty good there. Now I will take another clamp and start bending it. I think I'll move this around a little bit so that you can see it better and I can get better access. All right, I'm back. Got everything, I think, in better position than it was. So now we're going to take this clamp. This is a situation where you kind of work with what you got. I mean, I do not have a lot of equipment. I probably got more than the average guy, but I do not have really great amounts of equipment to do all this stuff, so I kind of end up doing a lot of this stuff kind of in an unusual fashion. So now I'm clamping down my socket, and I want to clamp it down to a point where I get that little bend in it. Which, of course, on camera, it doesn't work as good as it does when you aren't recording. But we'll get it. Now, I chose aluminum because of the fact that aluminum is a softer metal and it bends a lot easier than steel. And I suppose I could have used steel and heated it up and bent it. But nowadays, with the price of acetylene, it's cheaper to do it this way. What you might hear the fan blowing in the background, that's my garage heater because it is January. And when I'm out here working, I like to keep it about 60 degrees. So, unfortunately, the other section of my garage isn't heated, so I haven't been spending much time out there at all. So I clamped that down pretty good. I look at it, see that it's completely bent in there. And I'm going to bend this up a little bit. We'll take this apart, and I'll show you what I've got here. If I had a press, it'd probably work out better. But you can see that it's coming along pretty good. Now I'll flip it around, clamp that end in. Square it up. Make sure it's secure. Okay. Now what I've done is, actually, I've made this piece longer than what I need. So once I get this bent, then I will cut it to the right length, drill the holes, grind off the corners. Gotta get this socket straight on here. That's what happens when you don't have a press. You know, things have a tendency to move around, so we'll get it. But as you can see, the other side was fairly easy. Get some leverage here. And hopefully this thing doesn't come apart. It's twisting on me, so I'm going to have to reset it. Reset it up. It's always a little tense because you're waiting for everything to spring apart. And hopefully, looks like it's pretty stable right now, so a little force in there. Went and got a screwdriver here out of my toolbox, and now I'm looking to see if this has to be pried up a little bit. Actually, it looks pretty good. A little bit more pressure on there. I think we just about got it. I'm an overdoer, so I probably could have called it quits at that point, but what the heck. And she looks like she's pretty tight to the bumper. We'll see what we got here. Yeah, we're in the middle of January here, and so there's about 5-6 inches of snow outside, so we're not doing too much outside and spending a lot of time in the heated garage. Now, you can look at that, and you can see that I've got the profile I need. What I'll do now is I'll measure it, cut it here, cut it there, drill my 2 holes on each side of the hump, round off the corners, and then I'll have my bracket, or at least half of my bracket, the hardest part of my bracket. So the next thing is, I painted black. I use Rust-Oleum paint. That seems to be the most prevalent paint they sell around here because it is made somewhat locally, manufactured, and it does hold up very well. It's a pretty good product. So next thing I'll show you is the mounting of the brackets onto the bumper bracket, and then we'll install the tail lights, or I should say brake lights. Talk to you next time. Well, now that I've got the brackets made, I'm going to test the lights, because I noticed on the box that it says 12 volts. Well, my car is only wired for 6 volts. So with these lights here, I mean, basically all I would have to do is change out the bulb to a 6 volt bulb. But I'm going to see how these 12 volt bulbs work. And I've got my battery charger here. I've already got my ground cable hooked up. Now, the red wire is for the stop lights. The yellow wire, stumbling around here, is for the turn signals. So what I'm going to do is check them out and see how bright they are. Well, I use the stoplight wire, the red wire, and it looks pretty bright to me. Now, I use the turning signal wire, which is the yellow one, and it's not quite as bright. So what I'm going to do is try them both together now. Maybe it'll be brighter. You can see that with both of them on there, it is brighter. If I pull away the red wire, it is dimmer. So now I'm going to put them both back on there and it's bright. Now I'm going to remove the yellow wire and see if it dims at all. So it does not dim at all when I just use the red wire. So obviously the red wire is adequate enough and it'll give me the brightest light. So now I just disconnect them. So now I'm all ready to wire them up once I get the brackets put in place. And that'll be the next part of the video that I will show you how that's going to go together. And like I said, I've done this on my other car, so it should be pretty straightforward. And as soon as I can get out there and get the lights going and get everything set up, we'll do that. All right, we're out here in the garage by the old cars. Unfortunately, it's pretty cold out here today. Outside, the temperature is about 25 degrees, and this portion of the garage isn't heated. So we're going to try to make this as quick as possible so I can get in where it's nice and warm in the other section of the garage. But I did want to show you how I'm going to mount these brake lights. And I'll mount one of them. The other one will be exactly the same. So I've got my brackets here, and I've got my bolts here, and we'll go ahead and start fastening this together. What I ended up doing is using 5/16 bolts. Generally what I try to do is try to use stainless steel bolts because of the fact that I don't know if I have to ever take them apart again or anything. I don't have to worry about rusting, and stainless steel bolts for the little amount of and fasteners that I use on this car, I think it's worth the price. It'll keep the car looking nice for several years. Should probably make sure that I'm in the picture frame when I put this all together here. Put the bolt in the top, open it up, slide it over, and then I'll get another bolt here. Oh, yeah, it's a little cold. I'm a little shaky. Everything's cold. Now, I like to use a blanket underneath where I'm working for the fact that if I drop something, it'll end up landing on the blanket and it won't go rolling away. And if I drop something like the tail light, or the backup light I should say, the brake light, it'll end up landing on the blanket and it'll be kind of cushioned from the concrete. Now generally when I work in a low position like this, and in most cases, I try not to kneel because I'm always concerned about saving wear and tear on my knees. And after working construction for so many years, many workers have a tendency to end up with knee replacements and issues with their knees. So I have to say that doing it this way, so far I haven't had any knee issues, which I feel very fortunate for. I know my father, he worked construction, same as I did, and he ended up with a double knee replacement. And talking to people that have had it done, it's not a pleasurable thing to go through. It might be a necessity, but it's not exactly what one looks forward to doing as you get older. So, sitting on my ass, I can always deal with a sore butt, but sore knees can be problems. So, in the process of tightening this down now, I squared it up pretty well. Yeah, we're looking forward to later on in the week. It's going to get up around 40 degrees here, in the middle of January. So that sounds pretty good to me. Okay, just checking to see if it looks pretty snug here. What I want to do is get it tight, but I don't want to bend the bracket. So I think that's a pretty good spot right there. Because just being made out of aluminum, it would be easy to do that. So here I'm taking the wires, taking the bolt off. I don't know if you can hear the radio in the background. Hopefully it isn't bothering the recording very much. Should have probably turned it off, but when you're out in the garage by yourself, you always kind of like some background noise to keep you company. And what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now seems to be pretty interesting to most people. So I've been kind of listening, keeping up on that stuff because not much is happening in my house. My wife just goes off to work, and I work out in the garage. So hopefully she'll retire in a few years, and we can be down in some more mild climate than out here in the garage freezing my butt off in January. I made these holes fairly snug, so there isn't much play in them. Well, we got the threads caught. Oh, thought I did. Sometimes things go together easy, sometimes they don't. Sometimes the simplest things you think would go together don't. Oh, there we go. Finally got it caught. All right, got that. Now, what I want to do is kind of straighten that up. That looks pretty good. My wrench on there. Try not to chip the paint. That's what's always nerve-wracking about working on these cars, is try not to do more damage to them. Okay, now it's tight. Oh, what I'm going to end up doing is actually running the wires underneath. I'll probably put shrink wrap on them so that they're black, so they can kind of blend in. And then run the wires underneath the sheet metal here. And then I'll end up connecting them with the wires on the other side. Now, generally, I avoid drilling holes. I mean, some people might say, well, why don't you just drill a hole and put a rubber grommet or something and pull it through? But in case I ever want to change these lights around, do something different, I'm really not one person that likes to add on to the amount of holes in the car. I know I've got some ones in the firewall that somebody had drilled in, and some in the dashboard where people had put extra switches, and I just think it's better off just trying to either clamp things or else sneak things around through existing holes. There are different spaces so that you can get access with it without adding more holes than you need. So that shows you how that's going to look. And I think I gotta take this lens. I'm gonna loosen up the screw on the back here. Take this lens and turn it a little bit because of the fact that the lens right now looks kind of crooked there. It looks like the design of the lens is going on an angle. So I'll turn the lens so it looks like everything's running vertical. And then I'll move on to the other side. Well, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back, and I went and got a screwdriver, so we'll give this a little bit of a turn. And it looks pretty good right there. All right, that's fastened, and I'm liking it. And now I'll go do the other side, and then I'll work on the wiring underneath, which shouldn't be too hard because I'll just hook all the wires to the wiring of the original taillight, and it should be simple. So I'll show you that once I'm done with the wiring, and I'll show you how they look.